Welcome to The Opposing View, the podcast where complex ideas meet structured debate. In each episode, two experts go head-to-head over today's most urgent and often overlooked questions. The format is simple: 2 rounds, 2 voices, no shouting, just facts, logic, and strong opinions. This episode is part of our special series, Underrated Global Threats, the Black Swan series. We're diving into risks that seem unlikely until they aren't. Today's motion: a global food system collapse is a real possibility within the next 5 years. Is that just alarmist speculation? Or is there real evidence behind the growing whispers of agricultural fragility, supply chain interdependence, and environmental stress? To explore this, you'll hear two opposing experts. One argues that the cracks are widening, and collapse is closer than we think. The other insists that the system is more resilient than it looks, and that fear is the real danger. 2 rounds, one big question. And in the end, you decide. Tell us in the comments, which side convinced you? Whose argument made you think twice? Who won the debate? Let the debate begin. Before we begin, let me introduce today's two experts. First, Dr. Helen Strauss. A systems ecologist and food security analyst, she spent the last decade studying supply chains, soil degradation, and systemic risk. She argues in favor of the motion that a global food system collapse is not just possible, but increasingly likely within the next 5 years. Opposing her is Professor Daniel Madsen, an agricultural economist and former advisor on global trade resilience. He believes the alarmism is unfounded. He argues against the motion, insisting that the global food system, while stressed, is far more adaptive and self-correcting than many think. Here's how the debate works. 2 rounds. Each speaker gets up to 2 minutes per round. Round 1, opening statements, where each expert presents their main argument. Round 2, rebuttals, a chance to respond directly to the other's claims and challenge their logic. No interruptions, no moderation, just structured opposition. At the end, there's no winner, unless you decide. So listen carefully and tell us in the comments. Are you Team Strauss or Team Madsen? Did this change your mind or confirm what you already believed? Let's begin with round 1. Dr. Strauss, the stage is yours.
Thank you, John. Let me be absolutely clear. The idea of a global food system collapse within 5 years is not alarmist fiction. We are witnessing the convergence of multiple compounding risks: climate extremes, ecosystem breakdown, soil erosion, water scarcity, geopolitical shocks, all happening simultaneously. The climate is already disrupting food production. Maize yields could drop by 24% by 2030, according to NASA. And in 2022, over 295 million people faced acute food insecurity. That's not a forecast. That's collapse already unfolding. The global food system is efficient, but fragile. It's a just-in-time, highly interconnected network with no slack. A simultaneous harvest failure across 3 regions. That could spike prices by 400%, says Lloyd's of London. Meanwhile, we're losing bees, topsoil, and groundwater, and fighting wars in the world's grain belts. This isn't theory. This is now. As UN High Commissioner Volker Turk said, "Our environment is burning, it's drying, it's dying." So no, this isn't fear-mongering. It's a rational, science-based warning. If we ignore it, we gamble with collapse. If we face it, we have a fighting chance.
Thank you, Dr. Strauss. That was a powerful opening from our first panelist, arguing that the global food system is at real risk of systemic collapse, driven by converging crises and escalating fragilities. But how likely is that scenario really? Can innovation, trade, and adaptation save us from catastrophe? To challenge the motion, let's now hear from our next speaker, who believes that the food system, despite its flaws, is more resilient than we think. Professor Madsen, what do you have to say?
We absolutely agree that the global food system is under pressure. But the claim that it's on the verge of collapse within the next 5 years, that's not what the data or the science actually supports. Let's look at the record. According to the FAO and OECD's 2023 Agricultural Outlook, global food production is still projected to increase over the coming decade, even under moderate climate stress. The IPCC's sixth assessment report does warn of climate risks to agriculture, but it also highlights significant adaptive capacity, especially in temperate regions where yields of some crops like wheat could even improve in the short term. When it comes to supply chain fragility, we've seen disruptions, COVID-19, the Ukraine war. But these didn't lead to collapse. Instead, global markets rerouted shipments, new suppliers emerged, and key crops continued to flow. The World Bank has documented how wheat and fertilizer exports recovered within months after the Black Sea shock. Technological innovation also matters. We're not in the 1970s. Precision agriculture, remote sensing, and gene-edited crops are scaling. For example, drought-tolerant maize developed by Kemit and partners has been adopted by millions of farmers in sub-Saharan Africa, reducing yield losses during dry spells. And while it's true that biodiversity loss and water scarcity are serious, these are gradual structural risks, not sudden collapse triggers. A systemic breakdown within 5 years would require simultaneous global multi-breadbasket failure. But NASA's 2021 study found that while climate change reduces maize yields under high-emission scenarios, the largest projected declines manifest after 2030, not before. The Lloyd's of London 2023 risk scenario, often cited by collapse advocates, assigns only a 2.3% annual probability to a global food shock. Even if that risk is real, it is not inevitable and should be weighed accordingly. Finally, the Global Hunger Index and Our World in Data show that while acute food insecurity has worsened in specific regions, per capita global food supply remains stable. And most food crises today are driven by conflict and poverty, not production failure. In short, yes, we need reform. Yes, there are real vulnerabilities, but there is no scientific consensus predicting a full global food system collapse by 2030. The more constructive path is to invest in adaptation, reduce waste, strengthen resilience, and reject exaggerated narratives that paralyze action. Collapse is not our destiny. It's a scenario we can avoid if we act, not panic. Thank you.
What we've just heard are not merely competing facts, but fundamentally different worldviews about how systems behave under stress. Now we move to round 2, the rebuttals. This is where assumptions are tested, logic is sharpened, and the debate deepens. We begin again with Dr. Helen Strauss, responding to Professor Madsen's argument.
Thank you. I respect the optimism, but I believe it rests on assumptions that no longer hold in the real world. Yes, the OECD/FAO Outlook projects rising production, but it explicitly assumes normal weather and stable geopolitics. That's the problem. The models do not account for simultaneous climate shocks, trade wars, or system-level fragility. The idea that innovation will save us also needs scrutiny. The IPCC AR6 warns that adaptive capacity drops sharply beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, and that we are already near that threshold. Drought-tolerant maize in Africa? A great step, but it doesn't offset groundwater collapse in India, aquifer depletion in the US, or pollinator loss on a global scale. We're seeing structural decay, not just temporary setbacks. Regarding the Lloyd's 2.3% annual risk, that's not comforting. It's alarming. A 1 in 5 chance over 10 years for $1 trillion shock. That's enough to reshape foreign policy or financial markets. So why not food policy? Finally, the notion that markets adjust ignores reality. 258 million people faced crisis-level food insecurity in 2022. That's not a distribution hiccup. It's a symptom of a system that's already breaking down under pressure. In short, we're not predicting collapse. We're warning of credible risk. And 5 years is not a long time. The prudent stance isn't panic. It's preparation. Let's not wait until the shelves are empty to ask if the system was resilient enough.
A strong counterpoint from Dr. Strauss, pressing the case for urgency. Now, let's hear how Professor Madsen responds.
Let me offer a few clarifications. First, yes, the OECD/FAO outlook assumes stable conditions, but no credible institution can model chaos. We need to base policy on expected outcomes, not worst-case speculation. And the expected trajectory remains cautiously positive. Second, the IPCC does warn of adaptation limits, but it also shows that many adaptive responses are still underutilized. The danger is not that we lack options, but that we fail to implement them. That's a policy problem, not a structural inevitability. The pro side mentions pollinator collapse, groundwater depletion, and biodiversity loss. All serious, yes, but these are slow burn threats, measured in decades. They do not support the claim that a food system collapse is imminent within 5 years. As for the Lloyd's 2.3% probability, let's remember that's a high-impact, low-probability scenario. It should guide contingency planning, not define our public narrative. Otherwise, we risk policy driven by fear, not strategy. Finally, citing 258 million in food crisis sounds dire, but the main drivers are conflict, poverty, and political failure, not global food production failure. If anything, this proves that collapse is not about crops, it's about access. And access is something we can fix. So let's be clear. The food system is under pressure, but not beyond its limits. Panic won't protect us. Practical investment and governance will.
That concludes today's panel on the viability of global food system collapse within 5 years. We heard powerful arguments on both sides. From one perspective, the convergence of climate extremes, ecological decline, and geopolitical volatility suggests a system already under existential stress. From the other, historical resilience, adaptive capacity, and emerging innovations offer a path forward if we act wisely and decisively. As always on Opposing View, we don't claim to settle the debate, but we believe that structured disagreement sharpens insight. We invite you, our listeners, to reflect, question, and dig deeper. What do you believe? Are we 5 years from collapse or 5 years from transformation? Until next time, stay critical, stay curious,